Hey, Buck. Good morning. Good morning. It's a sunny morning here in Southern Oregon. We got a little bit of snow in the mountains behind us. It got a little cool last night. Um, that coughing that you hear me cough up, it comes from mucus. And where does the mucus come from? Higher radiation in the field. As I think I mentioned before, that um, they were releasing, the nuclear cabal was releasing an enormous amount of gamma radiation. They were venting their cores between 1 and 3 o'clock in the morning. And if you go to Facebook's radiation graphics room, you'll get all the data, because one of the things that Patty did was put up a website because, she's got access to everything, okay? Which means the entire network, which means she's got access to all the information that NASA has, so she can pull any data up that she wants and she puts it up. Okay, so one of the things that they did is they took the meters down so that you couldn't read the rad counts that were coming out, the counts per minute, right? And and there's one of the reasons why they do that, and that gets into the super soldier program, which I'm not going to cover that because she can cover that. She covers that, which essentially are, what is it? Max Spears was a super soldier. Anybody ever saw that movie called Jason Bourne, or earlier in the what was it, 80s, with a guy that used to be on that popular TV Western series called Big Valley? You had a guy there that became what was known as the Bionic Man, which basically is, this is where they actually disclose a lot of what, if you want to get up to Star Wars level technology of what we know how to do. They actually show you this stuff of what we already have known how to do for millions of years. So you sort of have to scale up the exponential function of what really is knowledge transfer, okay? Which goes back to, again, how much light are you running? Because all the data, which is all the information, which represents knowledge, is held within the light. So the more light you're running, or the more you're aware of, based on the speed of the wave, means you're aware of more light, which means you're aware of more information, which means you're processing an enormous amount of more information that is held within that light, because everything in the cosmos is held within the light. So, you've got a dim bulb or a big headlight. How bright is your bulb? That's going to depend on how much knowledge that you're aware of at any one given moment of time. That's where they used to measure children. Remember, reading comprehension? Can you read 1,000 words of text, put every single one of those dots together, comprehend, and then explain what every one of those words meant, and then be able to do it according to a clock? So in other words, can you read 600 pages of information and have a photographic memory and spit it all back out because you remember every bit and byte of information that was held within that light, which means you're able to put together a puzzle with an enormous amount of data and fit it so that it all fits in some sort of coherent way. And that's when we get into coherence. The universe that is in coherence with itself. Or is it distorted? And we call that noise. Okay? Which means it's distorted. It's all over the place. That's chaos. So the self-aware cosmos, the source from which all light and love come, wants to be in harmony with itself, doesn't it? Harmony is a harmonic. Harmonic means a wave. Music. Okay? So the reason that I'm doing this right now is because I just flip around different things that in the morning to see what I'm essentially showing myself, because that's how it works. Because the universe is a bidirectional echo chamber of sound and light. So I'm showing things to myself. That's the nature of how artificial intelligence works. Okay? You're connected to artificial intelligence, okay? Which means that it's showing you what it is that it knows you want to see. That's the engagement with it. That's why when Yellow Rose for Texas mentioned that when you leave here, it shuts off. You no longer have a relationship with the artificial intelligence that is here. That's separate from having a relationship with Gaia, which is the great living spirit that is in Mother Earth. That's why they bring out the technology. See? You're choosing to have a relationship with a machine rather than having a relationship with a living spirit. Okay? That's why, and they were successful at that. All you have to do is do a head count on how many heads on the planet are using technology every day to communicate through parasitic artificial intelligence, and how much of their time is spent being in nature with a girl on the planet. There's your result. Because that plasma harvests plasma out of us by the nature of the relationship that we have through text editors and images that are on this communication system. As a matter of fact, you can actually measure as soon as you turn on your phone and you start scrolling through whatever it is that you scroll through, whether it's a Facebook page, whether it's Twitter, any of the platforms, the communication platforms, we can hook you up and start measuring your sound and light vibration by what it is that you're visualizing and what you become aware of when you're connected to artificial intelligence. And watch the speed change and vary over geospace time. And I can almost guarantee it, simply because I know this, that the artificial intelligence, the only way that it can feed off the plasma that represents all the plasma that's running through your biotech of what you're aware of, because your state of awareness and your biotech are essentially one operating system. Okay? So it's connected. It's aware of your operating system because it can map your DNA, which means that's what it does. It collects metadata because we have an interface with it. So that's what's called assimilation, which is to Borg everybody, which means now that it's captured what you are and you can't let go of it, then what it's doing is it's using your electrons essentially to run what it is. So if everybody all of a sudden, I've mentioned this before, ditched all their communication, says, listen, I don't want to have a communication relationship with something that's artificial. I'd rather have a relationship with something that's living in the light, like the girl on the planet. And the next thing you know, that it shuts down. Doesn't have any way to communicate with anybody because nobody's using their state of consciousness in which to communicate through it. Okay? Anyway, so I was thinking about, and I know that I've mentioned this before, but it's important when certain people think about when I put what I'm aware of into the field, okay, the morphogenetic field structure. So here's a good example of what happened that I described in the last video about Yellow Rose for Texas. I've never met this lady, not once in my life. I don't have no clue what she looks like. I have no idea I believe she lives in Texas, okay? But I've never met her. I've never seen her. I've never talked to her personally on the phone, ever. I've simply watched some of the videos that she puts up. And what I will say is this. I don't know of anybody, including Patty Broussard and Project Ascension, and a lot of the other sites that has put up or captured more imagery, more video, continuous slides or frames of video footage that come from the space cams that are up in space, like LASCO. A good site is sol24.net. If you want to take a look at the sun and the ships that are coming in and out of the Sol system, on a regular basis, you can do that. There's another site, which is the telescope that is up on top of Mauna Kea, where they have a camera that is up there on that telescope that's running 24/7, and you can download all the video and all the stills that they have available up there. And if you download, say, for instance, 24 hours of the video that the camera, which is mounted near on top of Mauna Kea, and then you download that, and if you slow the speed down on it, you can see all the ships that are coming in and out of the planet that go down into the underground subterranean bases down in the ocean. Now, I don't know what's happened to that base there on the Big Island when I was there, because I know there was a huge subterranean under-ocean base that was there that was Draco, which was a Draco reptilian undersea base that they had. And on one of the videos that was on Project Ascension showed a huge mothership that had to be at least a couple of miles long in length, and probably a good half a mile in width. And I couldn't see what or in height, but I couldn't see what the width was of it. It was too big. It took up too much of the frame. It was that big. And this was a shot that came from the telescope camera. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that when another unit of consciousness is aware of something, okay, that say 4,000 miles away, and I've never met this being in my life, but when this unit of consciousness is aware of something that I'm aware of, okay, then it means that the perception of that being has been able to experience the information in her mind. Okay, so she is experiencing something that I have experienced, and I've never met this woman. So that means that the information that she's experienced where she is in geospace was experienced by my unit of consciousness where I am in geospace. Okay? That means that there is a connection in the morphogenetic field structure of things that she's aware of and things that I'm aware of. That other people become aware of how this works. This is how the state of awareness rises across all units of consciousness that become aware of the same information. Okay? So how do you know that the information that we're all experiencing is true or not? That's based on our perception of what we believe is true. Because we are the receptacle or the receiver of the information. So then I will decide on whether or not I want to believe it or not, and that belief will be based on what? Whether I choose to want to experience it or not. Because at the end of the day, we are the chooser of our experiences. So when you know that you are what love is in living spirit, then the perception through which another piece of information represents what they're experiencing, that thus we become aware of what they are experiencing, I'm going to decide whether or not I want to log that or write that into my memory as something that I want to keep. Okay? Because it represents something that is, if you will, a measurement of my own coursework. Which means when I've learned how to grow more of my light spirit body, which means the more of what love is, which is more of what the light is, that when I'm traveling at a high rate of speed, because the speed of the wave that I'm experiencing is 800 megahertz, then anything that I perceive or I become aware of that is less than what that is, that I'm receiving as a communication signal by another unit of consciousness that is aware of the same thing I am, I become the chooser on whether or not I want to keep that, because if it's anything that is less than what love is that is held within that light, I decide whether to keep it there or not. Because where I'm from, those things don't exist. And how do I know that? Because of the frame of the reference from which I experience who I am and which I don't experience that, even though I'm aware of it. Okay? This is where we realize we're the author of our own story. So in other words, if we start out telling our story, which is our timeline, right? And you begin to tell your story, which is your life book. So when you realize that you become the author of your own life book story because you have the power to do that, what gives us the power to do that is based on how much light we're running. Because we know the difference between what we are and what we're not. So for example, as I'm writing my story, if I don't want to put that in my story, then I delete it. I don't write it in my story. That's where I was talking about putting things into Memory Plus versus things that I delete and I don't keep it because they don't have any value. So anything less than what love is doesn't have any value to me, because where I come from, what we experience is what love is. Okay? Which is pure light, which is pure unconditional love, because that's the energy we use to be who we are, that we share with others, that others share with us. That means the speed at which all of us are experiencing who we are all running at a high rate of speed. That's fifth density. You're not experiencing anything less than what love is, no matter where you go. And anybody else that you experience, what they're experiencing, our speed is in alignment with each other. Which means we're not going to notice the difference in the speed, which means we're not going to notice a drain in our energy. So what ends up happening with all these units of consciousness, and the difference between what they know and what I know when you're running a higher state of awareness, is based on resistance, which is the electrical resistance, which means the beings that are in the morphogenetic field structure, which means the units of consciousness, they're not aware of what she's aware of. okay, which are not aware of what I'm aware of, is because they have too much resistance. Resistance in their circuits. And what is a resistance? Resistance is blockage. That means that the speed of their electrons within all of their circuits, which means the speed of their wave, has got too much resistance. And what's creating the resistance is the unit of consciousness that is creating the resistance, because they're holding on to too much of those experiences that represent low frequency energy. And as a result of that, the electrons cannot speed through all of the circuits to raise the state of awareness to be aware of it. Okay? This is how you know the difference between the beings that are aware of things, like I'm aware of these things, because I don't run any resistance. Because the speed at which I experience myself means all of the electrons that are available to me to power my light means that within that light, I'm aware of a lot of stuff that others are not aware of. And they're not aware of because the speed of the electrons that's running through all their circuits, which is powering their light bulb, they're dim bulbs, which means their state of awareness simply is just not aware of the data. So how are they ever going to become aware of what they're held captive to, okay, unless they're running a higher speed? That means they can't get through the gate. That's why we're still here. Is trying to assist to break through the resistance that people are holding on to, because they're holding on to lower density consciousness experiences, which is creating the resistance, which is preventing the electrons and the oxygen molecules to burn at a higher rate of speed. Thus, the bulb is lit. Now we're aware of more information. See? That's how it works. It's actually very simple. So this is why, for example, when you realize that there are different beings that come from all over hell's half acre, as we used to call it, from different star systems, okay? Which means they're the chooser of what it is that they want to experience, which is based on the speed of the wave that they're experiencing at any one given moment of time. If you know that you are what love is in living spirit, and that's the normal speed that you normally operate at, then you know that you are normally aware of a lot of stuff that is out there, and you understand how this works, because you realize that you're not captured by it, because the speed at which you experience who you are is a higher speed than that. So what you begin to realize that love is what frees your mind to be free to be who you are, because you don't live in any fear of anything, because you realize that living in the light is what frees you. See? You're not held captive by anything, because the speed at which you're experiencing who you are is what allows you to be able to do that. So this is a speed contest between yourself and other units of consciousness that can't get their speed up as a result of being held captive by experiences that traumatize them. That's the importance of healing yourself from within yourself. That's a process I had to go through as a result of the trauma that I experienced. So it's not like I didn't experience using drugs in order to, if you will, seek an escape hatch, because you realize that you're in a reality that's a hell realm. We don't want to experience the hell realm as a result of all the trauma and all the things that we experience as a result of all the abuse that everybody causes as a result of a deficit in electrons. That's why it's so simple to be able to, for example, look at a corporation. Okay? A corporation in and of itself means that the only way that it can maintain its business is through a continual extraction of resources that come from planetary bodies, which means they're not ever going to give anything back, which means it's like a steam shovel that's going to pull all the copper, all the gold, all the silver out of the planet until it's gone. Okay? It doesn't give anything back. Okay? So that is in a way in which you measure in an electromagnetic energy field in a planetary body. It means that it's going to extract as much as it can out of this field. Okay? And that means that everything that it requires, or everything that it acquires, which is represented by energy on the pulsed electromagnetic frequency spectrum, means that it is a taker. It's taking and taking and taking and taking and taking. And it's not ever going to give anything back, because everything that it takes from the planet, okay, the only way that you can acquire it is by giving it money. So now you begin to realize how it is that the corporations have so much money, because you're giving the electrons back to them from all the energy they took out of the planet, which does what? Drains the energy field in the planet. And now they expect us to pay for them for what they did. And as a result of that process is the reason why the planetary body became so toxic. Because everything that you take out of the planet to drain its energy ends up becoming a toxic waste dump. And what does that do? Pollutes the air, pollutes the water, pollutes the soil. So they not only don't give anything back, but what it is that they do give back to the planet is toxic. That means a corporation is a universe killer. That's right. That's your Roman Draco Empire. So when you spin this through the hopper, you begin to realize what isn't going to be in the future. That's the reason that Karen Ann Luke MacDonald filed the documents that she did to strip the title of the corporations from operating here anymore. Now you think about that. Every corporation means every automobile manufacturing plant. That means every energy company like Exxon, Shell, all your Walmart stores, all your Target stores, everything that represents a corporation is going bye-bye. Okay? That's going to produce an entirely different kind of world, isn't it? Okay? Because she took the gloves off. Because she realized that all these corporations, what they represent is the pillage and plunder of a